Sorry. Trust me, it's going to make sense. My name is Ahmad Garland, and welcome back to another episode of Breaking Bread. Today, we're going to talk about workplace trauma and that you can be aware of it and not bring it because sometimes you're the problem. Hear me out. Okay, let's get into it. I come from an environment where it is acceptable to yell at people, degrade them, belittle them, uh, demean them, call them out their name. I come from an environment where you only act like you kind of care, but you really don't. You're just, you can get away with it. Now, is that everyone? No, because it's always exceptions to the rule and it's not always the baseline. But there are more times than not, it's a thing, right? You get in these situations where you just can be abusive. So you learn a few, trauma techniques. Like what? Well, one, you learn how to be able to hyper communicate, and also you learn two, how to do conflict resolution. And when you get a little bit in charge, number three, you learn how to take care of the people below you by being able to navigate certain situations, certain pieces of communication. Those are the positives. Here are the bad things that come with it. Sometimes you get in these positions where you just keep your head down and take the abuse and you don't speak up for yourself because you know nothing will change. Because in my community, there is no HR. All right. Two, you get in these situations where you harbor resentment and anger and you start to complain out loud and talk, stuff behind people's backs, which isn't the most positive information you can use for an environment. So don't suggest doing that, but I've done that and it's not proud of it. And three, right, you get in these situations where you just don't trust anyone. And every time you see a leader, you just like, oh yeah, cool, whatever you say, because you're just like everybody else. And you don't give anyone a chance to maybe prove you wrong, get very close-minded, right? So, but that happens though, and they're all valid, but it's a thing. So let's talk about it. Workplace trauma. When you get into a new environment, here is some advice that you can take, that you can use. I've used all of this and it's worked for me. So let me know if it works for you. One, open mind. You got to have an open mind. Why? Because not everybody is the same as everyone else. Not every boss is the same. Not every coworker is the same. Not every person that is working in a different section is the same, or even section leads or section heads is the same. Not the people that you have to work with that may not be at the same level as you. Just they're not the same. So have an open mind. Two, understand that you have prejudices. Prejudices are not bad. Prejudicial. Prejudices are only bad when you don't follow rule number one, which is have an open mind. So what does that mean? Be able to identify within yourself objectively that I have prejudices based on certain actions and know where your trigger points are, i.e., if one of my employers talks to me in a more aggressive tone, that may trigger me to be like, who are you talking to? I don't play that. Or the other way of, okay, boss, whatever you say, and just accept that and they feel like they can run over you. And as a boss, and if you've led other people in certain harsh environments, don't bring that energy in. Be aware. I'm like, okay, maybe I don't have to talk to them this way. That worked in my last place or my last people that I work with, but it doesn't work for them. Works both ways, right? You got to have it both ways. So be aware of that. And like, okay, cool. They talked like this. I don't really like it. I'm going to just, have a conversation afterwards. Like, hey, I come from a place where I don't like how that's communication. That doesn't work for me. It comes from another place of crap and abuse, and I don't really like that. So can we please, change how we communicate to each other? And it's not like, don't have to be on eggshells with each other, but just like, hey, I would like you to communicate with me in a certain way. And then as the other person, you should be able to have that conversation back. Like, okay, this is how I communicate. I'm sorry that I communicated like that and it has negative effects on you. How do we meet in the middle? Because this is kind of a baseline and I'll work on my stuff, but let's just work on it together. Because working on things together is important. Because if I'm working on it and you're working on it and we're both working on it, then there is what? Understanding and leniency. When we fail, hey, I know they're working on it. It's okay. Hey, I know you're working on it. It's okay. Crazy, right? Number three, when you go into a new workplace, don't bring the same energy of like, well, in my last job, we used, who cares? Nobody cares. No one has ever cared. It's actually super annoying. Don't do that. Now, if there are certain skill sets that you've learned there, then show them. Or if you've seen a certain project for methodology go a certain way, okay, that's different. But like, well, my last job, we used to do that and that and that. No one wants to hear that because you're not there anymore. And it turns people off around you. And sometimes it can cause barriers that people don't want to listen to at all, i.e., number 4, which is be aware of your natural barriers that you have created and be aware of the new barriers in the new environment that you're in. What do I mean? When you say certain things or act a certain way based on what you've previously endured, right? Well, you have certain barriers that are naturally there. Maybe it's how you present yourself. When I got into the workforce, the civilian side, I was told that you're very upfront, you're very standoffish, and your shoulders rolled back, and you're like very looks aggressive, right? Well, that's how I was taught to stand. However, it doesn't always translate into the civilian workforce. So just be aware of your barriers. So I had to soften my posture and understand and be more approachable so people would listen. Because I had one person give me feedback saying like, well, the way you stand and how you present yourself doesn't really make you approachable, nor do I really want to listen to you because it sounds like you're telling me more than you're kind of crowdsourcing. So I had to change how my verbiage because I can be very direct. So I was like, oh, that's really good value added feedback. Which leads me to number 5, which is the most important one of them all, is humbleness. Knowing that you have trauma, knowing that you have certain triggers, and knowing that you're working on certain things, and I hope you're working on those things because that's how we grow and evolve. Because you can't grow, you can't change, you can't evolve, you can't succeed. Well, it's not true. People do it all the time. No. Ask anyone who's really, really developed. They've grown as people. That's how you get better. Period. I'll argue that all day. But the humility is knowing your faults, or how they say it in the civilian sector for everyone out there who's going to civilian sector, know your opportunities and know your gaps. Because by doing that and being humble about it, you actually can be approachable, open, transparent, and well, everyone can see that too. And fun fact, all those things together create a pretty fun working environment. And also for you, can change your mind on the new environment that you're in, and you don't have to spoil it and sully it when maybe you didn't have to. And maybe you might be like, wow, I'm actually hurting the environment that's actually good here because of how my traumas in the past. Now, one quick caveat. However, with prejudices and the open mind and the trauma from the workplace, sometimes a duck is a duck. Sometimes you get to a place and you understand like, oh, this looks very familiar. Open mind, humble, okay, blah, blah. And then you let people's actions show you the truth. Because as we always say, talk is cheap. And people's actions are the autobiography of who they are. So let them show you before you already make your judgments. Cool? Cool. See you soon. Cheers.